Dear listener, welcome to the 10th story in the adventures of Sherlock Holmes, The Adventure of the Noble Bachelor. This is one of the most charming, socially observant, and cleverly constructed tales in the entire canon. It is a delightful story of high society, a mysterious disappearance on a wedding day, hidden pasts, and the clash between American independence and British aristocratic expectations. Narrated by Dr. John H. Watson, the adventure begins with the arrival of the elegant, but somewhat pompous Lord Robert Street Simon, and quickly involves a vanished bride, a missing wedding dress, a bouquet floating in the Serpentine, and a trail of clues that leads from the grandest drawing rooms of Mayfair to the humblest corners of Hyde Park. From the rustle of silk gowns and the clink of crystal at the wedding breakfast to the quiet observation of a flower cellar and a discarded bouquet. Every tiny detail, every social nuance, every discarded wedding card, and every brilliant deduction will unfold here in rich, vivid, and extended detail. Nothing of importance is left untold. Settle in as the wedding bells fall strangely silent and the mystery of the noble bachelor begins. The game is afoot, and this time, it walks the fine line between high society and hidden truth. Opening scene, Lord Robert Street Simon arrives at Baker Street. It was a bright, crisp autumn morning in the year 1887. The London streets were alive with the usual bustle. Carriages rattling over the cobblestones, street vendors calling their wares, and the distant chime of church bells. I, Dr. John H. Watson, had called upon my friend Sherlock Holmes at 221B, Baker Street after finishing my morning rounds. Holmes was seated at the breakfast table, reading a letter with an expression of mild amusement on his sharp features. The letter was from Lord Robert St. Simon, second son of the Duke of Balmoral, requesting an immediate interview on a matter of the utmost delicacy and urgency. Holmes had scarcely finished reading it aloud when the bell rang downstairs, and moments later, the nobleman himself was shown into the sitting room. Lord Robert Street Simon was a tall, aristocratic gentleman of about 40 years, impeccably dressed in the height of fashion. A perfectly cut morning coat, a silk hat, and a pearl gray tie. He had a thin, high-bridged nose, a slightly haughty expression, and the polished, effortless manners of one born into the highest circles of society. He carried a gold-headed cane and spoke with the precise, clipped accent of the English upper class. He explained his problem with a mixture of irritation, embarrassment, and genuine concern. The previous day, he had married Miss Hattie Doran, a young and beautiful American heiress whose father had made a vast fortune in the goldfields of California. The wedding had taken place with great pomp at St. George's Church in Hanover Square, followed by a lavish reception and breakfast at the home of the bride's father in Lancaster Gate. Everything had proceeded perfectly until the moment the bride mysteriously disappeared. After the ceremony, during the wedding breakfast, Miss Doran had suddenly risen from the table, saying she felt slightly unwell. She had left the room and was never seen again. Her wedding dress, veil, and bouquet were later found floating in the Serpentine in Hyde Park. No note, no explanation, and no trace of the bride remained. The newspapers were already buzzing with scandalous rumors, and Lord Street Simon feared public ridicule more than anything else. He had come to Holmes hoping for a swift, discreet, and satisfactory resolution. Holmes listens and begins his investigation. Holmes listened with keen interest, his fingertips pressed together and his eyes half closed in concentration. He asked precise, probing questions about the bride's background, her behavior on the wedding day, any previous acquaintances she might have had, and the exact sequence of events during the breakfast. Lord Street Simon described Miss Hattie Doran as a strikingly beautiful young woman of about 20, with a lively, independent American spirit. She was outspoken, unconventional, and not entirely comfortable with the rigid formalities and social etiquette of English high society. She had seemed happy and composed during the ceremony itself, but had become strangely agitated and distracted during the wedding breakfast. Holmes noted several curious points. The sudden disappearance immediately after the ceremony, the discarded wedding clothes found in the Serpentine, the fact that the bride had brought very little luggage with her to England, and the presence of an old American acquaintance, Mr. Francis Hay Moulton, among the wedding guests. He also observed that Lord St. Simon spoke of the marriage more as a financial and social arrangement than a passionate love match. After the nobleman left, Holmes turned to me with a thoughtful smile. "This is a most interesting little problem, Watson," he said. "The facts are singular, but the solution may prove surprisingly simple once we collect the right data." Holmes's deductions and inquiries. Holmes began by carefully examining the wedding announcement and the list of guests. He noted that Miss Doran had been seen talking animatedly with Mr. Francis Hay Moulton just before the ceremony, an old acquaintance from her days in America. He also observed that the bride's wedding dress, veil, and bouquet had been found in the Serpentine, but her other clothes and personal items were missing. Holmes deduced that the bride had not been kidnapped or murdered, but had left of her own free will. The key lay in her American past. He sent several telegrams to contacts in London and spent the afternoon making discreet inquiries among the flower sellers, cab drivers, and park keepers near Hyde Park. By evening, he had gathered enough information to form a clear and complete picture of what had happened. The truth revealed. The meeting at Baker Street the next morning, Holmes invited both Lord Robert Street Simon and Miss Doran's father, Mr. Aloysius Doran, to Baker Street. When they arrived, Holmes calmly announced that the missing bride was alive, well, and had not been the victim of any crime. He then revealed the full story with his characteristic clarity. Miss Hattie Doran had been secretly married several years earlier in America to Mr. Francis Hay Moulton, a gold miner. When Moulton was reported lost and presumed dead in a mining accident, Hattie believed she was a widow. Eventually, she agreed to marry Lord St. Simon, partly for social position and partly to please her father. On the morning of the wedding, however, she had suddenly seen Moulton alive and well among the wedding guests. Overcome with joy, guilt, and confusion, she had slipped away during the breakfast, changed out of her wedding clothes in a quiet corner of Hyde Park, and gone away with Moulton to start their life together again. The discarded dress, veil, and bouquet had been thrown into the Serpentine to create the appearance of a tragedy and to buy them time to escape without immediate pursuit. Lord Street Simon was furious at first, feeling deeply humiliated. Holmes gently reminded him that the marriage had never been consummated and that Miss Doran had acted out of genuine love rather than deceit. The nobleman eventually accepted the situation with as much dignity as he could muster. Mr. Aloysius Doran, the practical American father, was more philosophical and even expressed quiet relief that his daughter had followed her heart rather than social ambition. Closing narration and Watson's reflection, Holmes later explained the entire chain of reasoning to me. The case had turned on small but vital clues. The bride's sudden change of mood during the breakfast, the discarded wedding clothes found in the park, the absence of other luggage, and the presence of an old American acquaintance at the wedding. "It is a capital mistake to theorize without data," he remarked. "But once the data is collected, the solution is often surprisingly simple." Watson reflected that this adventure beautifully illustrated the contrast between the rigid traditions of British aristocracy and the free-spirited independence of America. It also showed Holmes's ability to move easily between the highest levels of society and the streets, solving a delicate social scandal with tact, understanding, and a touch of humor rather than scandalous exposure. In the end, no crime had been committed, only a heart that had chosen love over convenience and social pressure. If your pulse quickened at the mysterious disappearance on the wedding day, your mind marveled at Holmes's elegant deductions from a discarded bouquet and a changed mood, and you smiled at the happy reunion of the true lovers, then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle has succeeded in creating one of his most charming and socially insightful short adventures. The wedding bells may have fallen strangely silent, dear listener, but the game is always afoot.